told you guys I had a huge guest that was going to be here with me. He's known for a various of names, the Ayatollah of rock and roller, the Mick Jagger of sports entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Chirs Jericho. What's going on, Doc?
I got to tell you, man, I hadn't texted you in a while, and I read that somewhere with the Mick Jagger of sports entertainment. I had to give you a text. I thought that was pretty cool.
No, man, I'm serious, man. I was serious about that, man. I wasn't trying to throw no shade on those other guys or anything, but I'm like, come on, man, this is Chirs Jericho, man. I mean, come on, this guy walking the room. People want to get close to him. People want a photo, people want an autograph. People want to call people and say, man, can you talk to somebody, It's that kind of stuff. So I know exactly. That brings me to it, man. How do you keep yourself, man? How do you keep, reinvent yourself?
This is something, when you mentioned Mick Jagger, it's definitely one of my, inspirations, shall I say, just for the longevity of someone like Mick and the Stones, because they're carving a path to where when rock and roll first started in the 50s and 60s, when you were 23, you were expected to be done by 24, and, our parents were retired at 50. Now the Stones are in their 70s, still doing it at top level. Not quite the same for wrestling, obviously, because there's a lot of physical aspect. But when you're talking about a guy like Mick, there's a lot of motion and energy on stage. And I do kind of have the same thought process now at 48, in that what maybe I don't do as good as what I did when I was 20. I do everything else or so many other things way better, that I think being 48, people go, wow, how do you do it? It's not so much how. I think it's just being smart, and also not listening and putting the rules of what, whatever the sport is. Like when you hit 40, you're done. Like I remember watching AWA probably early 80s. Nick Bockwinkel, I think, was 50, and he was the best guy on the show. He had the most heat. So I think we put that on ourselves to be like, well, how old is this guy? It's more like, how smart are you as a worker? And can you still draw in people's attention? I think I've been really good at harnessing that, which allows me to stay very relevant and continue to reinvent everything else as well.
Man, I talk about Nick Bockwinkel all the time. I say, man, I idolize Nick Bockwinkel. I always want to be, a guy like Nick, because he was such a good wrestler. He was such a good talker. He was well mannered. Everything about Nick Bockwinkel said, man, this guy's, like my brother said, back in the day, when Ric Flair came to town, he said, that's the real boy there. And I say that's like Nick Bockwinkel. He was the real boy, man. But I look at you, Chris, and the thing is, such as myself, I don't want to give myself a pat on the back or anything like that, but I believe in the next generation. I believe in, passing it on, even going all the way back to WCW, you cracked me up when you sent me that text talking about a cone track, because a lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of people don't know.
What does that mean?
Get somebody a cone track, man. That's what my thing was back in WCW. I could be working with a guy. I didn't care who he was. He could be a guy that they didn't use on the card, in a great way or anything. He could have been a guy that people didn't even think he could work that well. But I always want to take those guys and go out there and say, hey, man, tonight I'm going to get you a cone track. You know what I mean? I wanted to go out there and put those guys in the best light they possibly could be, so they could come up. And a lot of those guys, Chris could attest to this, a lot of those guys got cone tracks. You know what I mean?
And that's the secret to being a great worker is not just having good matches, with the best, but having good matches with guys, like you said, that maybe aren't as good or aren't as well known, and getting them the notoriety and getting them the proverbial cone track, making everybody look good. And when you can do that, you're always going to have a job. And I mean, you did it very well too over the years of your career, working into your 40s, to where you start to learn, like, listen, it's like the Johnny Carson show. Okay, when I used to watch a guest go on the Johnny Carson show, Carson laid back, man. It was his show. Yeah. You're not going to get more over than Johnny. He would put over his guests to where every guest came across like a star. And that's the same thing for me, wrestling-wise. People know they know what I do. They know my stuff. They know what I do. They know who I am. I don't have to go out there and try and get over. I'm already over. What my job is to get some of the the guys that haven't had the spotlight that I have up into that position, even if it's just for that 20-minute match. And then it's up to them to continue forward. So there is a real art to that. And there's not a lot of guys that can do that because there's not a lot of guys with the experience and the longevity that I have.
Yeah.
So, I'd never have a problem in putting somebody over. That doesn't necessarily mean winning or losing, but if you're going to win a match, give the guy 90%. Just make it good.
Yeah.
Make people believe that he can win, and then you win. If you're going to lose the match, it's the same thing. Just make him look good all the way to the end, where there's no way he's going to win, and then he wins. Guess what? It doesn't hurt me at all. That's part of it.
Because it's entertainment. You know what I mean? That's one thing.
Exactly.
That's one thing I never thought about. My 1-loss record or anything like that.
No.
I was listening to you talk about the story. I was listening to it on YouTube or something. The story you was talking about Goldberg, and let me switch gears and move to another direction because Brad looking at me like, well, where's he going with this? Now my thing is, I want to talk about, man, back in the day, it was a competition between us. You know what I mean? I mean, Chirs Jericho. I I was cool with Chirs Jericho, but he wasn't a great friend of mine or anything because it was a competition, and I knew I might have to, I might have to wrestle Chirs Jericho, and I knew I was going to want to go out and shine. I was going to want to make him shine, but we're vying for a position, as well as, I might, we might actually have beef, and we might get into a fight or something in the back, I miss those days, you know what I mean, where guys actually had real, competition going out there and vying for that spot and knowing that, man, it's testosterone going around. And do you see that anymore in this day and age?
I really don't as much. And let me just expand upon what you said. I always say, in WCW, for example, it was kind of a different world because it was a very much of a unrestful situation. And I remember, you and I were never really good friends, barely even talked, but where we really got along and where we really discovered our common bond was in the ring.
Yes, indeed.
You know what I mean? Starting on house shows and then working on TV. And maybe at first, maybe Booker said something that pisses me off, or maybe I said something that pisses you off. But in the ring, it's like, you know what? That guy, he's a little bit arrogant, but he's a pretty damn good worker, and we're having a great match together. And that's where, and you're right about that. For example, Triple H and I, for years, didn't really like each other. But at the same time, we were having classic matches all the way to the point where we headlined WrestleMania together. Did we like each other at that point in time? No, I didn't like him at all.
Yeah. And
I know he didn't like me, but that tension created this drive to, you know what, this MRFer, I'm going to show him what's up. I'm going to show him who's better, and he can take it and shove it up his rear end. And I think a lot of times back in those days, Vince actually encouraged that because he knew you would get better performances in the ring. You know what I mean? And I think whether it's right or wrong, actually it is right because it doesn't matter. I mean, backstage, obviously we all want to get along and be friends. And as you get older, I remember with Triple H a couple of years ago, I was like, why did we not like each other again? What was it that we didn't like too much? You know what I mean? But when you're younger, that's all that matters. I'm going to show him, and I'm going to show the boss, I'm going to show the people who's better. And that just created magic in the ring, which I think there is a missing element of that because there's not as much at stake now. And I'm not saying this like, back in my day, but there's not as much at stake because there's guaranteed money. The company, it doesn't matter who's on top because it's the WWE or it's AEW where it's just the name itself. But in the past, you were fighting for that pay-per-view main event, which meant you would make more money because your guarantee was only, a fraction of what it is now. So that does make a difference.
Nah, man, I can honestly say, man, in WCW, you was one of the best guys to work with, man, for me, man. Every time we went out, it was magic. Every time, I remember out of all of the guys, literally, out of all of the hundreds, out of thousands of guys I perhaps worked in my career, all of them, literally, you took that sidewalk slam better than all of them. I swear to God. I was like, man, you would lay out on it, boom. It was like a bomb would explode, Nobody could take that. And that's the art of a true worker right there, man. The guys that will go out there and go above and beyond to make the other guys look good at the same time.
What's funny is that I remember this. I don't know if you're going to remember this or not, but I remember you always dressed nice and sometimes chewing on a cigar, not smoking it, just chewing on it for some reason. But I remember one time, it might have been the first time that they put you and I together on TV or something along those lines. And this is how WCW was. It was so strange to be in the cruiserweight division. But meanwhile, look who was in that division. Me, Benoit, Eddie, Dean, Mysterio, like some of the best guys in the company. I remember the first time they put you and me together, you said, "Come on, man, I ain't no cruiserweight." And I remember I said to you, dude, I weigh 225 pounds. How much do you weigh? It's not that much taller than you, if I'm even smaller at all. You might be a couple inches taller than me. And then we went out there and had this great match, and that was never an issue ever again.
Yeah, man.
And then we started looking forward to it. I mean, I remember the matches that you had with Benoit, the best of 7, and working with Eddie, and it's like you start realizing, like, oh my gosh, this is so easy and so much fun. And a guy like you is so easy to work with because you're so athletic anyways, along with a bunch of other guys. That's, like I said, that's when you start realizing that the limits that the other people are putting on each other, putting on us, you, me, whoever, all that goes away when you're in the ring. And then it's like, man, this is just a good match. And that really, like I said, to work with you at that point in time was a huge step for me because you weren't in the cruiserweight division. So that kind of enabled me to go, now I'm in the TV champion division or whatever it was, but it meant something to kind of continue building your name. And a lot of that had to do with one of the first guys I was in there with that was outside of that realm.
It's crazy to hear you talk like that, man, because I swear I didn't think about you like that as far as I always thought you was a star. You know what I mean? I always thought you know what? A lot of times that's the way, we think about ourselves. We just want to go out there and do the work. I know back in WCW, I used to talk a lot of crap, tell you, go follow that, you know what I mean? And literally, I was, getting on all of the older guys' nerves, but that's what the business brought out of me back then. I know Brad,
I was going to ask you, Chris, you talked about, Booker saying, I'm no cruiserweight. Was it hard for you to get, I guess, to shed that cruiserweight label in front of the fans' eyes?
It really wasn't, because it's like I said, once again, if you look at two guys in a ring, I mean, unless it's, the Big Show and Rey Mysterio in the ring together, everyone pretty much looks the same. When you're sitting like in the 15th row, and let's say it's Booker and Jericho, or let's say it's Triple H and Eddie, like, okay, that guy's a little taller, but they're both got a lot of muscles, and it really doesn't make a difference. I think the biggest stigma was just because WCW was so into the cruiserweight division and made a real concerted effort to make it a cruiserweight division, which was one of its strengths. I think that there was kind of this, you kind of buy into it a bit. Like, well, cruiserweight is kind of at the beginning of the show, and I'm not a cruiserweight, so why would I want to do that? Meanwhile, all it takes is one match. You could look at Mustafa Ali and how he was a 205 Live guy, and then the next day he's main eventing SmackDown against Daniel Bryan, who's technically smaller than Mustafa Ali, who was a 205 Live guy, So, I mean, I think it's something that the fans say you work yourself into a shoot, or we say that. And what that means when you work yourself into a shoot is you're believing something that's really not real until you believe that it's real. And I think that kind of happened in that WCW time frame, because once again, the atmosphere from the top on down was very negative. Not all the time, but it got to that point where suddenly everybody's complaining. And when we all went to WWE, when I went there first, and then Show was there, and then Booker's there, and Steiner's there, and Page is there, and all these guys, all of us, we became kind of different people, because you realize that, like, this is pretty cool, man. There's really nothing to complain about, and all of that negativity was pretty much gone at that point. And it was just about having the best match and then just putting on a great show. And I think all of us will agree that the atmosphere was a little bit better in WWE just because of that.
Yeah. Hey, man, this is the first time I've ever asked this question. I always wondered what, the Canadian mentality, as far as wrestling goes, because I've wrestled, several Canadians, from yourself, to Christian, to Martel, Benoit,
Lance
Storm, so many of Edge, so many of you guys, man. I've wrestled, and it seemed like all of you guys went to the same wrestling school. You guys all have the same. No, I'm serious. It seemed like all of you guys work almost exactly the same way. Where does that come from, man?
I think, well, the majority of the guys that you mentioned all came through the Hart system in one way or another. Like from guys like Lance and I actually training in Calgary to Jay and Adam, Edge and Christian went to a couple of Bret Hart, sessions. And I think from our generation, we all grew up watching wrestling, watching Bret Hart. For me, even more so watching Stampede Wrestling, which was again
Bret Hart.
Benoit.
Yeah,
Bret Hart. Yeah, but Pillman and Benoit were there, and Owen Hart. Like all these guys were kind of my heroes when I was a teenager because they all wrestled this high flying, hard hitting style. It was basically a combination of Japanese style, European style, and American style. So when I grew up wanting to get into wrestling, obviously I loved WWE and Hulk Hogan and all those guys, but I knew I was a smaller guy, so I always said I want to be like Owen Hart. And I think Jay felt that way and Adam felt that way. So we all start wanting to be like these guys. So you watch and train and emulate them a little bit, that Dynamite Kid type of a style.
Yeah.
But you're right, though. I mean, I think the Hart Brothers training camp, where a lot of us came out of, everybody hits the turnbuckles the same way. Everybody takes a body slam the same way because that's how we're trained.
Yeah.
From this, Stu Hart had this book that he had written over the years of how to train guys. And even after he wasn't training anymore, whoever was training used this book. And I think a lot of those little lessons and ideas of hit the turnbuckle as hard as you can. That's all it says in there, but that's something that you might not learn in a wrestling school.
Yeah.
Hit that turnbuckle to make the ring shake.
Yeah.
And make those chains that are hanging make a sound.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? If you look at any Canadian guy from that era, everybody hits the turnbuckle so hard. So that could be a little bit of it right there.
No, I was just wondering, man, because like I say, every one of you guys, man, all have, like you said, it's real. It's real to you.
Yeah.
And it was always real to me, and that's why I was like, man, it seemed like I went to that school too. But
right.
but because I had that same mentality. So I just was always wondering, man, because like you say, Bret Hart.
I think.
Go ahead.
But I think too, Booker. I mean, you grew up in Texas, right? So
yeah.
Whether you were watching the Von Erichs or not, there was this fingerprint of this huge local wrestling company run by a family of brothers. Geez, boy, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same as Calgary, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's always a little bit of similarities. I've noticed it too when you're talking about Austin and guys along those lines from Texas.
Yeah.
It's just something like, okay, if I'm in Canada, I want to learn how to wrestle in Calgary. If I'm, in that southern states area, I want to wrestle in Texas.
That's true, yeah.
So that could be, a little bit of similarities just by the fact that there's two families that are kind of doing the exact same thing at the same time.
Hey, man, let's switch gears a little bit, man. It seemed like the rise of, I wouldn't say the rise, but the resurgence of Chirs Jericho started, man, when you made the trip overseas, man, and went to Japan and did the thing with Kenny Omega. I know that thing was awesome, man. I mean, you don't have to tell me the build up or anything, but what was that like? Finally, getting that shot in New Japan Wrestling in front of that crowd. Something totally different. I remember going way back in the day, and it was something totally different for me.
Yeah.
And now it's 3 times as big or even bigger. What was that like, man?
Well, once again, so just briefly, I basically cut my teeth in Japan. I think I'd been there maybe 50 times when I signed with WCW in '96.
Right.
But, we went there a few times over the years with WWE, maybe once a year, once every couple of years. But always keeping an eye on what's going on the international scene in New Japan, seeing the rise of what's going on over there. But then the rise, here's where it really came together for me was Kenny Omega obviously was becoming the top guy there. But where is he from? Winnipeg. Where am I from? Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And Don Callis, who's the commentator, is also from Winnipeg. So all 3 of us knew each other. I didn't know Kenny, but Kenny knew Don. I know Don. And Don just came up with the idea of, what do you think about you guys doing this match at the Tokyo Dome? I was not wrestling at the time. We were on tour with Fozzy. And I liked the concept of it, but I also loved it because it's 2 guys from Winnipeg, like this barren wasteland in the middle of the prairies in Canada, and 2 different generations of really great wrestlers coming from Winnipeg facing each other in the main event of the Tokyo Dome. I was like, how could I not want to do that?
Right.
And so that's where it all started. We put the offer together, and I told Vince I was going to do it. He was like, I why, oh my goodness, this is so much fun because there's no, and you'll understand what I'm saying about this, Booker, there's no chains or restrictions as far as creativity. And not that WWE restricts you, but if they do things a certain way because it's Vince's world. And when you work there, you know it. You love it. It's a great time. It's fun. If you know how to do it, you could become very successful there. But there's also something to be said about taking all of those, Vince McMahonisms away and just being completely on your own. And I really enjoyed that. So I signed on to do a couple more matches, and suddenly that's where you're coming up with new character ideas, and the vibe of this character doesn't fit this old, Y2J type thing, and a little bit more of a kind of a modern day Bruiser Brody psycho beatdown guy. And that's kind of where it all started, was just having this freedom to do different things. Like, oh, maybe I'll put this makeup on and see what happens, or maybe I'll use this top hat and see. And just seeing the reactions and going, I really like this, And this is, and you'll know this, if you wanted to do that, at a pay-per-view in WWE, you would have to go ask your agent, you'd have to go ask the other agent, then you go have to ask Kevin Dunn, and then you have to go ask Vince, and they have to take a poll and send out a survay, and it's like,
do we have to rehearse it?
That's right. Have somebody at the home office. Yeah, somebody at the home office design what the makeup is going to be, and it's just like, no, I'm just going to take this black lipstick and put some lines on my face, and I like that vibe. I'm just going to go out there and do it. So it all kind of came from that, doing something completely different in the world of wrestling, which after doing it for the same way for so long and doing it differently was like, wow, this is really fun. And that's the secret. It was really fun for me, and that's why I wanted to continue doing that.
That's what I love about New Japan is the pageantry. Everybody's everybody's so over the top. I remember Kenny Omega. He came out and he looked like Buck Rogers or somebody. He had this big bop gun, and
like the Terminator.
He was in all silver.
The Terminator, yeah.
And I was like, who is this guy? That's before
Buck Rogers.
I swear that's what he looked like, man. But it got over with me, man. I was like, I like it. It's cool,
But that match, Chris, with you and Kenny, that opened so many more people up to New Japan style of wrestling. I had never even heard of New Japan World. I didn't know they had a streaming service. I signed up for it and paid my 999 yen just so I could watch the match.
Right.
And then you find all this other content. So I think that match did so much for New Japan, putting them on the map stateside.
Well, and that was the point, like when I signed with them, explaining, and they understood it, just how important it was to have me there. And it's the same thing with AEW as well. Is that, okay, so there's this other company, and maybe we've heard of some of the guys, maybe we haven't, but then when Chirs Jericho goes, I'm like a bridge from one company to another. So people like yourself are going, listen, I've heard a lot about this New Japan, never really watched it, but now if Jericho's going there and there's this match that everyone's talking about, let me go see what it's all about. Then when they watch the match, they go, oh, that was awesome. But then we got to see Okada, and we got to see, Naito, and we got to see the Young Bucks and all these other people. Then they become fans of the product itself. So I think that's one thing that's very valuable to have me involved, is not a lot of guys that can be that bridge to get people. It's like, listen, we know that WWE is amazing. We all love it. I love it. But I'm going over here now. So if you like what I do, trust me, just give us a try. Because I'm not going to go over here if it's something that's not up to snuff and not worthy of the lineage that I have. So I think that really worked for New Japan, and I think it's really working for AEW as well. And that people see, oh, what is this AEW? Oh, Jericho's there. Oh my gosh, it makes it legit to a lot of people that might not give it a chance any other way. So I think it's something that worked in New Japan for sure, and I think it's already working for AEW. And the fact that we sold 12,000 tickets in 4 minutes for our show in Las Vegas, which is the first time ever a wrestling show has ever sold out in Las Vegas, never mind in a day, never mind in 5 minutes. So there's a buzz there as well. So I think it's something that kind of an intangible that I bring to the table that not a lot of other guys do.
Hey man, let's talk about that. As far as AEW, man, everybody's excited about AEW, and just the new blood, I mean, no pun intended from back in the day, the new blood. The new blood in professional wrestling now, guys that, haven't had that platform, to be seen and heard around the world where they can actually create their legacy. It's so much more room to go around. Before we even get started, you guys, AEW is dealing with their first loss in Luke Perry.
The father of Jungle Boy.
Yeah, man. How are you guys dealing with that?
Well, I mean, part of the extended family, right? And Luke was a huge wrestling fan. And one of those guys that I never got to meet. But here's something that's really cool. I have a mutual friend that works on Riverdale with him. My daughter's a huge fan. And literally less than 2 months ago, he sent my daughters a video through this mutual friend. Hey, I'm saying hi. And, of course, for 12-year-old girls, twins, to get this message from Archie and Archie's dad, they were flipping out. And so when I found out that Jungle Boy was signed, I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'll keep an eye on this kid, see how he does. And then now when his father passed away, the first thing I did was send a DM to Jungle Boy, who I've never met, and just kind of told him a little bit about what he did for my family, not even knowing me. And so now I kind of feel it's my duty to help him out, to do what I can to kind of make his family's day the way that his dad made my family's day. So, iconic loss for sure. But I think I'm really glad that Luke got to see Jungle Boy sign with the AEW, even though he didn't get to see a match.
Yeah.
I think the fact that his son signed his first contract probably made him very, very proud. And that's something that Jack, Jungle Boy, can always kind of hold on to.
Man, condolences to the family. I tell you, that's the one part about the business that suck, right? Because we are such a close-knit family. It's inevitable. I mean, we have a birthday, we have a death date. That's just part of it. We just lost King Kong Bundy as well.
Right.
And I tell you, man, that's the one part of our business that suck. But we're immortalized, we're immortalized, man. We live forever. That's what we are. We're like superheroes, man. We never die. Hey,
well, I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's one of the things that, and you were there too, man. We ran hard.
Yeah.
Some of us harder than others. In the 90s, I was never in the business in the 80s. I started just October of 90, but the original, way I came into the business was that 80s style of just the crazy partying and just the lunatics all across. And luckily I never got into the one side of it. So I was pretty cool, but I saw a lot of my friends, fall by the wayside from the drugs and that sort of stuff. And I think that's one thing I appreciate. We make jokes about how guys just go back to their rooms to play video games nowadays, but I think in the long run, that's going to be good for the business. That guys won't be, passing away so young, which happened. Like, I mean, there was one point there in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it seemed like every week somebody was passing away. And it wasn't just somebody, it was somebody that I knew, somebody that I was friends with, or I'd met. And it's just like, I remember I made a list just for myself, and there was, I think, almost 40 people on it, guys that I just knew, And this was when I wasn't even 35, 34 years old. So I'm glad that the business as a whole has slowed down so we don't have to deal with as many of those sudden deaths that we did for the longest time.
Yeah. Hey man, I was the first video gamer. I was the first video gamer. When I won the heavyweight championship in WCW, they wanted to give me my own locker room, and I go, no, man, I don't want my own locker room. I don't want to be like some prima donna or anything like that. I say, just give me a 50-inch television and just bring it to every house show and to every TV and set it up. And
well, that's not being a prima donna at all.
Here's my favorite part. Yeah, don't give me a locker room that's in every arena that takes 2 seconds to find, but but give me a 50-inch TV that you have to cart along and wrap it up every week because I'm not a prima donna.
Bro, and what was crazy, they did it. Before we get to AEW, I got to WWE, and I'm in the locker. I have my own little portable system with me, right? So I brought it with me, and I'm in the locker room, and I got it all set up for some Madden football. I'm thinking the boys over there are going to be kind of like they were in WCW. So I'm setting it up. I got my team, and I'm all set up, and who was it? It was D'Lo Brown. D'Lo Brown, D'Lo Brown, he comes up, he goes, man, you playing some Madden? I go, yeah, man, you want to play? He goes, yeah, man, I'll play around with you. So we sit down, we commence the round, whatnot. I'm kicking his ass, right? Next thing you know, Michael Hayes walked by, and he goes, you guys playing video games, huh? And I go, yeah, we just playing some Madden. And he goes, okay. And he walks off. And D'Lo looks at me, and D'Lo, he's light-skinned brother, but he turned white. And he goes, man, I got to go. I was like, what the hell just happened? And from that point on, a note went out, no video games. No one can play video games. Show up at the ring. And I'm like, these guys are crazy here, man. But back to AEW, man. The young guys there, man, they got a whole lot better chance of making it to the next level of life. One of my girls, signed with AEW, Kylie Ray. She started with Reality of Wrestling down here. I'm so proud of Kylie. 3 years, man. 3 years of hard work, and now she's working at that level right there, man. Talk to me about the young talent and what the world can expect to see from AEW.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's one of those things where you got a great group of people, and one of the things I love about this company is it's something that could probably never happen. It never happen again, just by the fact that you have this group of legit main event guys who have not main evented in the States on a national level, but have been doing it in every company in every country they've worked in for 10 years, 15 years. So they're going to be like 15-year overnight sensations. Who is this guy? Who are these people? And it's going to be kind of, I think, a real awakening for a lot of wrestling fans that don't know these guys, but also have a hardcore, huge fan base. Plus, combine that with a family who has a lot of money that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Khan family. They own the Fulham Football Club in London. And their son, Tony, who is the head of AEW, is a huge wrestling fan. And not a wrestling fan. He's like a wrestling historian and analyzes. He does sports analytics for the NFL. So he's very analytical. So, yes, he's never run a wrestling company before, but Vince McMahon had never run a wrestling company before in 1982. You got to start somewhere. So I think with the money, the passion, and the guys being available, suddenly you've got this perfect storm to start a new company, and that's what we did. So this is not going to be competition for WWE. WWE is Coca-Cola. WWE is Kleenex, is Band-Aids. When you think of wrestling, that's the brand name. But there's always room for an alternative to WWE. If you don't like WWE, or you maybe are looking for something extra or new, that's what AEW could probably do, because it's going to be a whole different style, like I said. And what we're trying to do and what we are doing is different in what WCW did and what Impact did, and you were there, Book, is we're not using a lot of WWE guys. Like, if the whole roster was allowed to get their release, we wouldn't be signing them one by one. Very picky and choosy, because we want fresh names of guys like Kenny Omega, like the Young Bucks, Hangman Adam Page, MJF, Cody, Joey Janela, guys that are fresh to the business. So people have never seen these guys, and they're going to, like I said, I think they'd be really, really impressed by the level of talent that we have that's basically being discovered, quote unquote, after doing this for 10, 15 years. So, like I said, we're working on getting the TV right now. It's going to be something big. That's one of the reasons why I came here. And we're going to provide a pretty entertaining, pretty badass alternative to the WWE on a weekly basis.
Hey, man, I think it's more than enough room. People want to see different. People want to see young people doing things in general. That's what I base my reality of wrestling around.
Yes.
I have a bunch of young guys, because I say it's easy to aspire to be one of these young guys out there doing it, and then to have someone like you guiding the ship. It's very, very important to have that leading example of where you're trying to go and what you want to be. And I tell people all the time, man, I tell these young guys all the time, I say, guys, y'all could take a lot away from what Chirs Jericho is doing right now, because that's where you want to be at the end of your career. You want to still be on the uprise. A lot of these guys level out and then they descend, you know what I mean? But you want to keep ascending, and that's what you're doing, man. Before I get you out of here, man, 2020, man, the Jericho Cruise. We got to talk about it. Did you steal that idea from Tom Joyner? That's what I want to ask you.
From Tom Joyner?
Yeah. Tom Joyner do a cruise every year. He's been doing it for the last 30 years. And I'm going to tell you, it's highly successful, man. I mean, I think he had Chris Brown on the last cruise. But the Jericho Cruise, let's talk about it. What'd you get this idea?
What happened? So we did, Fozzy played the Kiss Cruise in 2015. And the Kiss Cruise is obviously all Kiss, the band Kiss. And they've been doing it for like 6 or 7 years. And I just thought when I got off it, it was one of the best experiences I ever had as a professional, as a musician, as a fan, as a tourist. So I said, I can do my own cruise. I'm going to make it a combination rock and roll wrestling cruise and live podcasts and, comedians and paranormal experts and all the stuff that I'm into. Wow. And so it took me 3 years, but last year we went in October from from Miami to the Bahamas, and we sold it out on the Norwegian Jade, a beautiful, huge, giant cruise ship. And, the first one, as you do when you start a business, everyone made money off it except for me, but that's okay because my goal was to make it an annual franchise, to make it a destination vacation, much like the Kiss Cruise. And that's what we did. So January 20th to 2020, we're doing the Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea Second Wave, Part 2. And we just started announcing who's going to be on it. And we just we're doing the pre-sales right now. And the pre-sales in 2 weeks have outsold what we did the first 5 months last year. So I think it's already a huge success. And we've got a whole lot of names coming up. We already got Jake the Snake and Vicky Guerrero is going to be the guest cruise director. And hilarious Brad Williams is the host, and the great bands, but we got a whole lot more pending, and those names will be rolled out over the next few months. So I think it's going to be, like I said, last year, we got a 99% approval rating of being the best vacation that people have ever been on. So when you get that sort of word of mouth, this is what happens.
Hey, man.
So look, you never know, man.
Hey, man, am I getting the invitation right now? Is that what we're doing?
My people are calling your people as we speak.
Okay. Hey, man.
The invite will be in the mail.
Look, how people can find out about it, man? Where do they got to go?
It's ChrisJerichoCruise.com, and we're still doing the pre-sale. So if you want to get your cabin booked before they go on sale to the general public, just sign up there, and you'll get a booking time, and you can go book your cruise. ChrisJerichoCruise.com. January 20th of next year, we're setting sail, and it's going to be a blast.
ChrisJerichoCruise.com, guys. Y'all heard it right here, man. Hey, man, I know you got business. I know you got to get out of here, man. I just want to thank you for coming, stepping inside the Hall of Fame here on ESPN 97.5. Hey, man, I appreciate you, bro. I love you. Whatever I can do for you, I'm always here, man.
Anytime, but congrats on all your success, and congrats on keeping them twins going, man. I know it's hard. I got the pair myself.
Oh, man.
Cheers, man.
Hey, I appreciate it. Later,
Thank
brother.
You,
all right.
Talk to you soon, Book. Bye.